Welcome to the latest episode of FoodTech Stories. I'm your host, FoodTech marketing expert Megan Thomas. FoodTech Stories features the leaders pioneering new approaches to technology, collaboration, and storytelling in the food tech and ag tech space. Food and agricultural changing, and fresh ideas and leadership are needed to sustainably feed the growing global population. Join us every other week as we talk to a founder, operator, or visionary in food and agriculture. Today's episode of FoodTech Stories features Dylan McDonnell. Dylan is the founder and CEO of Foodini. Welcome to the podcast, Dylan.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
Wonderful. Tell us about your journey to your current role.
I have a bit of a weird journey. You can probably hear an Irish accent, but I was born in Philly, grew up in Ireland, corporate lawyer by trade. I worked in big law for a number of years with the major kind of global tech companies, the Apples, Googles of the world. That then took me to Australia, and I worked there for a few years, still in my capacity as a lawyer. But while there, I started Foodini. My connection to the problem and the reason for it was celiac, diagnosed when I was 10, and have since then had a near lifetime of experiences dining out, and a lot of unfortunate negative ones as part of that. A lot of examples of just being served the wrong food, staff having the wrong information or no information. As time went by, I was getting more and more frustrated at dining and ordering online experience generally. And then I started digging into the problem. You kind of think you sit in your own little world and there's a few other people who have food allergies. How many can there really be? And once I realized there was 33 million Americans with a diagnosed food allergy, 50 more with an intolerance, meaning they react negatively to a food, but it's not a medical allergy. And then another 70 million who follow some form of lifestyle diet. So that's your vegans, your vegetarians, your ketos, your low FOD maps. I just couldn't understand how there was such a big market and so little information. And so decided to do something about it. Started the company initially in Australia, scaled a bit there. And then I moved across to the US March 24. So just about 18 months ago. And we've been scaling here since.
Kind of some quick back of the envelope math. Let's say it's just under 50% of Americans have some sort of accommodation when it comes to diet or that they might be seeking or lens they may be looking through in coming to their food choices. It reminds me of a client we work with that had to do with sleep and how there were so few actual products that address sleep, even though about half of people have trouble sleeping and we all sleep. I like the way you frame that. When I get the chance to meet listeners of the podcast, they often mention the quality of the production as one of their favorite parts of the show. That praise is due to the team that edits the show, TJG Media. Their team works with the raw audio files of each interview to enhance the quality of the sound, minimize external noise, and cut out the natural pauses that occur in conversation to create each fast-paced episode. Plus, they create engaging short-form videos to promote each episode on social media. Visit tjgmediallc.com to find out more. What can you tell us about the platform itself? Who is it designed to serve, and how does it work?
We kind of consider ourselves as bridging the communication gap between food service and consumer. So how we work in practice, we partner with restaurants, hotels, stadiums, schools, colleges, pretty much anywhere that serves food. We ingest their menu data, their recipe data, typically from inventory management systems, and their product data, which we typically pull from the distributors, because we obviously need the exact SKU number to understand the exact makeup of each product. We've trained large language models over a long period of time to be able to analyze and accurately tag every ingredient with the correct allergy and dietary information, which then obviously filters up to the menu, recipe and menu item level. We also have a team of dietitians who do most of that LLM training, but also do QA and kind of run our onboarding process as well. Once we have that then documented, centralized source of truth in terms of here's the menu and all the allergy dietary information, that allows us to power a front-end experience for the consumer, which is a personalized menu. A customer walks into a restaurant that we work with, and on the menu, there'll be a QR code saying food allergies or dietary needs, scan here. Or similarly, on the restaurant website, it will be allergy dietary menu, click here. Scan or click brings up a web app experience. So no app to download. It's a URL powered experience to create dietary profile. We've over 150 different diets and allergens that can be chosen from: gluten, keto, ginger, low FODMAP, save, and instantly the menu will auto customize to say, here's exactly what you can eat, here's exactly what you can eat with a modifier and what that modifier is, and here's what you can't eat and why. It's a completely personalized experience for the consumer, and it provides them with ingredient transparency as to what is in their food.
on premise or at a specific venue, then they simply have to provide the QR code. They don't need to have any special training or technology. It's literally empowering the consumer, the patron, with that information.
Exactly.
Is this something that the typical restaurateur or event venue, is it something that they value? How do they come to you?
Look, it's a big pain point for a restaurant. I spoke to how many people are impacted by this. You have some people where this is life and death. You have other consumers who they're just bullishly want to follow whatever diet for whatever personal reasons they have. We've all seen that become more and more prevalent in society, I'm sure. The biggest challenge, honestly, Megan, we have in terms of like getting a restaurant's attention is just awareness that this exists. We have a lot of empathy for restaurants and food service generally. Like, this is hard. It's a hard problem to solve, and the restaurant business is tough enough. Allergies is just something that's probably always on the list behind keeping the staff there, serving food, like providing a good experience. It's been something that traditionally is tough to document in the first place and then also keep up to date over time. Very manual, very tough to do in practice. How we position ourselves to restaurants is we do it all for you. You just send us the data you have. We do all of the heavy lifting, all of the onboarding. We'll come back to you with any clarifying questions. We then have a tech forward centralized source of truth that can populate this information everywhere in venue and on your website and with any other third parties as well. And we'll keep it up to date for you as well. We will solve this problem for you. And it's one that by not doing it, and we can speak to benefits maybe in a moment, but there's a lot of risks with not doing it and a lot of advantages to doing it properly.
Go ahead and share the risks and benefits.
Let's start with the benefits. So we said half the population nearly has some form of dietary need. If they don't know that your venue can accommodate them, they won't come. Simple as that. And if they don't come, it's generally not just them you're losing. It's their friends, their family, their co-workers, the team Christmas dinner, whatever. We call that the veto vote. If you lose the allergy person, you lose their circle as well. Additionally, they're also the most loyal consumer. Because they find it so difficult to find a place to dine, when you do capture them and they have a good experience, obviously, they will keep coming back again and again and again and again. There's the kind of revenue loyalty piece. Then there's operationally, we see about a 60% reduction in the number of questions being asked to staff when they implement this, which obviously turns lines faster. Customers are happier because they trust something that looks professional and accredited versus the 16-year-old wait staff who started last week who can't possibly be an expert on every allergen and every ingredient and every item. And accordingly, it also reduces mistakes drastically as well. 54% of all allergy mistakes that happen in restaurants happen after the staff are notified of the allergy. And that just tells you that that word of mouth communication piece is broken. Lastly, we also data. We provide our restaurants data every month on dietary profiles created. Last month, out of 2,000 profiles, 40% were gluten-free, 25% were vegan, 10% were keto, but you have no keto option on your menu. If you swap this ingredient for that ingredient, it will become keto friendly. This is how you can optimize your menu to drive more revenue and also marketing. Then, of course, you can use that same data to target customers, A lot of benefits to doing this the right way above and beyond just stopping people from dying in a restaurant.
Do you find that food service operators and folks who run hospitality operations, are they using that data?
Yeah, 100%. I literally had a customer only last week where they're 100% gluten-free poke concept. We were sending them the reporting and I was going through it and I saw about a third of all of the dietary profiles being created in Foodini were gluten-free. But straight away that tells me that none of those people realized that the entire menu was already gluten-free. They didn't actually need to use us in this instance because the whole menu is by default gluten-free. They didn't need our personalization service. The clear insight that derived is that it's not clearly marketed enough or clear enough to these consumers that is the case. That was the takeaway for him, and they've been trying to figure out how they can make that more apparent going forward. That's just the most recent example, but we absolutely see this data being analyzed by the operators who use data to drive their business forward.
Do you see, when you look across all of the profiles, is there a specific dietary need that rises to the top in terms of percentage?
Percentages tend to be like balanced across the board. Gluten-free, dairy-free, peanuts, tree nuts, vegan, vegetarian always trend the highest. But I think what's always interesting for the restaurant groups is When you come outside, say, the big top 9 and vegan, vegetarian, and you actually look at every dietary profile created in a month, we typically have about another 50 or 60 being selected out of our 150. Sure, it's not like it's a small percentage. It might only be 1 or 2% for each of them, but that adds up. And all of a sudden, you see that the bucket of people in the more niche, let's call them allergens and diets, all of a sudden cumulatively are nearly as much as a big segment like gluten-free. It's really fascinating to explore the data. What you'll see in somewhere like LA is that preference diets will trend much higher than somewhere like Dallas. But allergies tend to be very consistent across the country. And that's what we always say. Allergies don't really discriminate by geography, but like people following preference diets does change based on what city and what area you're in.
Very interesting. It's interesting to think about the data and how that might be used and what you could learn about consumer eating behavior from it. So you're a mission-driven company. What is the mission of Foodini and why is it important?
Our tagline is dietary needs made easy, but really our mission is to provide ingredient transparency to those that need it. It's important for a number of reasons, but I suppose the most critical is there are people who, on this issue, it is literally life and death. If you forget that there's a peanut or traces of sesame in some hummus or something like that, and you serve it to the wrong consumer, you can kill them. There has been a spate of high-profile deaths over the last number of years, massive rise in the percentage of lawsuits in this space. As we said, hospitality, it's like you want to focus on giving a good experience. Allergies isn't a sexy thing. You are really good at what you do, which is making great food and providing a great experience to customers. And we want you to make sure that you can focus on that. That's obviously why we say, let us manage the allergy component and try and de-risk that issue and let you focus on doing what you do well. For consumers, it's an exceptionally exclusionary issue as well. There are so many people who've just been burnt so many times that they won't go out with their friends for dinner anymore. They'll skip the team lunch. They'll like do all these things. And I just am such a believer that food and socializing and dining out is such a core component socially of our lives. For me, providing this transparency drives consumer trust, which brings them back to the table and is good for society holistically, and in particular, those people who maybe feel like right now they can't do that. It's a rewarding one. I think that our super users on the consumer side are the moms of kids with food allergies, and they're the ones that you can always tell it's the most worried, most freaked out, especially as their kids enter the teenage years and start exiting their constant supervision. The ability to kind of give a bit more peace of mind to these families and more safety to these kids, that is a rewarding part of, I suppose, what we do every day.
Certainly an important mission, and seems like your platform's very well positioned to deliver on that mission. How long has the platform been out in the marketplace?
We've only been in the US like 18 months.
18 months.
Yeah, in tandem with me coming across here, we were in Australia for about another 18 months prior to that. Still relatively new. And I think a lot of the first, let's call it 2 or so years of the genesis of the business was learning about every nuance of the industry and all the different tech stacks and all the players and where all the data needed to come from, and making sure that our models were trained on every variable and to never guess and not hallucinate, as anyone in the world of AI will know. Like, that you can get away with that in some places, but you can't get away with it in our world. You know, it's either right or it's wrong. It either has it or it doesn't. We have built our system in such a way that if it's not 100% sure, it creates a flag in our backend, which triggers manual intervention from our dietitian team always. If there's anything we still can't figure out, it goes to the venue to be confirmed. That's really, really important to us.
So relatively new. Can you share how many active users you have here in the US?
Yeah, well, we've had nearly 250,000 consumers use the technology. They primarily discover us through restaurants, bear in mind. They don't know that we're there when they walk in, when they go onto the website. As we grow more restaurants, we'll continue to grow more users discover us. Starting to work now with some of the bigger groups, which is exciting. And with that will come more and more and more usage, which is fantastic.
From a go-to-market standpoint, you've been focusing on the operator and then reaching the consumer when they're on premise or at the venue. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, our customer ultimately is the restaurant or food service side. They're the paying client, and the end user is the guest who comes in and obviously gets the benefit of the data, which provides them a better experience in that restaurant or food service venue.
And have you forged any partnerships as you've grown here in the US?
That was a pretty important part of this. So on the inventory side of things, so inventory recipes, the inventory management systems are the only place where recipes can be documented that we've discovered. They're not always, but they can be. We've partnered with a number of those players to, when we have a mutual customer, be able to pull that data straight in to our system to just completely streamline onboarding. it's a better experience for our now mutual client. Ultimately, we've been dealing a lot with online ordering. Our goal is to be able to power this experience in first and third party online ordering as well. We're dealing with all of the major players there, and we've been doing some pilots as well. So that's really exciting, and hopefully we'll be able to scale that over the next few months, especially regulation and things like that are kind of changing the landscape, and we can come to that in a moment. Similarly, with some of the distributors, we've built partnerships with a lot of them because, again, we needed the product data to be able to correctly identify the correct product and SKU. Partnerships is huge across the whole landscape. Like if we tried to do this in a silo, we would be unsuccessful. We kind of considered ourselves as non-competitive with nearly every player, but complementary in terms of we can add value to our now mutual customer as well.
We often talk on the podcast about the use of technology to develop new types of food or for processing. We're increasingly talking about AI and other applications, right, of technology around the food or in food delivery. Are there other tech founders in the food tech space or the food space that you regularly interact with? Is there an ecosystem or is there a mastermind group that you're part of? I'm just curious.
Yeah, there's a few. I'm in a group. There's a group in Europe actually. It's like European food tech CEOs that I'm in. There's one in the US as well. It's a lot of the events and conferences, I think, is where most of these relationships are built. You get introductions and you meet people on Zoom and start building a professional relationship. But I think it's when you then hit all the industry events and start meeting people in person and going to the happy hours after and blah, blah, blah. And you start to build a genuine rapport and personal relationship. That's when it opens the door to be able to drop a text or ring or put in a meeting to discuss maybe a challenge that the business is facing or ask for advice on something or be a bit more blunt. You can be a bit more straightforward. Most founders and people in the world of startup want to support others and, want to find ways of helping everyone out. And that's one of my favorite things about the culture of startup world, frankly, compared to corporate, is that like ethos of give back and help as well. I like to regularly catch up with other CEOs and other founders on challenges I have, and there absolutely are plenty in the US and beyond that are more than willing to do so.
Why do you think leaders in startups are more likely to be giving to their community than someone who works in a large corporation?
There are exceptions to this rule, but my hypothesis is that most startup founders, especially when they're going at it the first time, they make a ton of mistakes. They don't know what they're doing. They're trashing in the deep end, trying to figure out the right approach. I came from a legal background. This was my first company. I absolutely made mistakes at the start. What helps you is the people around you and asking for help from experienced founders who've been successful or advisors or investors or whatever. And without a lot of that advice and help that I got in the early days, I probably wouldn't be here today. Having lived through it, I now understand when someone else reaches out to me just how valuable that time can be. You just don't know what thought or what advice or what someone needs to hear that can set them back on the right track. I think that's it. It's your own personal experiences needing that assistance and being so grateful for that help that you didn't necessarily expect but were hopeful to get can really trigger that when someone asks it in turn.
And as a business owner myself, I could relate, right? So those, certain challenges emerge that surprise you and you may not have the lived experience to draw upon. So thank you for your opinion there. How big is your team, Dylan?
We're about 14 people. So yeah, and we're active in the US, Canada, and Australia. So they're the three markets that we're active in.
You alluded a few moments ago to the fact that you came out of big law and you're an attorney by training. How has that experience informed how you lead?
The good thing about big law, when I look at like now how I act is, that's a pressure cooker of an environment as well, right? It's a lot of long hours. It's very high and strong demands from clients, perfect or nothing. It definitely, for me personally, I think, build up my work ethic, my time management, my ability to operate under pressure and under stress. My desire ultimately to have everything work exactly as it should. Sometimes being too much of a perfectionist can bite you as well. I know there's a lot of different theories around shipping early versus shipping perfect and blah, blah, blah. But it definitely was a great environment, I think, for personal growth. I think nearly every skill I learned there is so transferable into what I do now. And then it's just a matter of just culturally trying to pass that down to the rest of the team and make sure that everyone is performing to their best, happy in what they do, and that ultimately driving towards the goals that we're trying to achieve.
And have you held on to kind of the legal responsibilities, or do you have someone else who does that for you?
I do a lot of it. At least I'm like, I can save some on some legal fees. It depends what it is. If it's like something specialized, like something technical US, I IP that I might not have, a background in, then sure. For anything day to day or basic contracts or whatnot, I take care of all of that. And a little more money kept in the bank account.
Having worked with other leaders who are lawyers, they often things end up on their desk. Hey, could you just look at this? I figured you might answer in that fashion. So, what's next for Foodini?
The big thing that's next, regulation. The first ever piece of food allergy legislation as relates to restaurants was signed by Gavin Newsom in California on the 13th of October, so about 6 or 7 weeks ago. It essentially stipulates that effective 1 July 26, every restaurant chain with 20 plus locations nationally, where at least one of those locations is in California, must label all their physical and digital menus with the major 9 food allergens.
Wow. Okay.
There's 2 ways they can do that physically in venue. They can either put like contains XYZ beside every single menu item, or they can implement a QR code that links out to digital allergy menu. And that's obviously what we do. That has essentially made us compliance software over the last number of weeks because, again, prior, there was no requirement to as much as document, not a mind display to consumers. In terms of our outbound approach, we're obviously quite focused now on these groups that are required to do this, notwithstanding that we get inbound all the time from groups all over the country who are not. Also, it means that a lot of food service organizations are going to be captured by this in terms of stadiums and other environments that will technically meet the criteria that SB 68 outlines. So we're going to focus on them. And then online ordering. As the kind of source of truth of this data, we believe our ultimate goal is to own and be in charge of this particular data set and propagate it everywhere that the menu sits. Whilst online ordering isn't on the hook for SB 68, they're inadvertently impacted because their customers will need to display this information within their platforms. So they need to enable them to do that, or else their customers will be in breach. So they can do that manually, or they can have a tech solution that will power it for them in that environment as well. That's kind of what we're building towards. More and more regulation is already in progress around the country. New York has a bill already in progress that's similar. Illinois and Oregon are getting ready. Federally, there's stuff happening as well, especially around ingredient transparency and what's in food and whatnot. So I think for the first time ever, there's a lot of momentum in the US around this issue. And I think we're just very fortunately well placed and well timed to be able to assist all the restaurants and food service groups to be compliant with this regulation that's coming.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You talked about on the ground how that's affecting where you're focusing, but has it affected your go to market strategy more broadly? Thinking about yourselves as more of a compliance platform, or how do you think about that?
The product itself hasn't really had to change at all. To your point, it's more go to market. It's more before we would outline all of the benefits of Foodini full stop. Now it's more, here are all the benefits of Foodini. However, you need a solution for this by 1 July. Just letting you know this is something that you need to address one way or another. And that's honestly, it's our biggest challenge is just getting that awareness and making sure that restaurant groups know that our solution and our technology exists, that it is superior to probably what they would have seen in the past. Give them all the information they need to make an informed decision as to what's best for their group.
The problem has suddenly become more urgent for many of your potential customers. What has surprised you the most about running the business?
I was very surprised as to how fragmented all of the data in the restaurant world was. I've only come to realize why so many restaurants and restaurateurs have not done this. You can very easy as a consumer to come around and say they don't care about us. They just haven't been enabled to. It's honestly largely not their fault. That is because of how fragmented that data is. And then just more broadly as a startup, taking food tech out of it for a second, I've learned that you need to be unbelievably resilient and persistent. When you're still a small company, you're getting 50 no's for every yes, whether that's from an investor, whether that's from a customer, whether that's from anything. You have to be able to brush the losses off very quickly, capitalize on the wins, learn from your mistakes, and grow as quickly as you can. And it's certainly not the easiest thing to do, but if you kind of truly believe in the mission and what you're trying to accomplish and have the right people around you, you'll get there. Not without a lot of knocks along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially in the current funding environment and just in the US, it's a very challenging market, as you well know. Definitely many headwinds, but it sounds like you're making good use of the tailwinds and sticking to your strategy, which is fantastic. So looking ahead to the next, let's say 5 or 10 years, what are you most excited about, either for your firm or in the larger sector?
The 2 keywords that I believe are critical to the industry, everything holistically, is personalization, one, and transparency, number two. You look at the modern day consumer, whether it's on Netflix or on TikTok or on DoorDash, consumers expect that the experience is personalized to them based on their needs, their wants, their history. And AI is more and more enabling that predictive element of what consumers want, and in turn driving more retention and conversion, etc. That is now, again, an expectation as opposed to nice to have. And then similarly, when it comes to transparency, I think there was a big suite of time where consumers, again, it was a nice to have. You look at things now like the food is medicine movement. You look at the super health and function health and superpowers of the world who are doing microbiome testing and gut health testing and telling you about the 100 different foods that you should and shouldn't be eating and blah, blah, blah. And more consumers are getting conscious of what they're putting into their body. And in turn, they need more transparency to understand that. That has now become a borderline expectation as well, and will only continue down that path. AI and everything, I know it's an extraordinarily broad phrase, but I think it's enabling a lot of this at a scale that at least I didn't think 2 years ago would be possible. That means it's only going to accelerate consumer demands on both personalization and transparency across everything, not just food tech.
I think those are very canny predictions. I like both of them, personalization and transparency. And I think transparency is sometimes forgotten. And just the consumer research that I've seen is that consumers want to know. They want things to be disclosed that they believe should be disclosed to them. Some consumers will have a lot of questions and will want to go deep into it. And some consumers will not have the time or the inclination to do so, but they want to feel that a brand or a restaurant has done right by them and provided the information that they expect.
And you make such a good point, because the way we look through that particular lens is we don't make recommendations. So we don't tell you you should eat vegan or you should be keto or you should be gluten-free or whatever. All we do is give you transparency as to what is in there to allow you to make an informed decision based on whatever medical, lifestyle, personal decision that you decide to make. We give you the transparency. You make a decision based on what you need and want for your body. And I think that's a key delineation there.
Completely agree. It's empowering for people maybe with a serious allergy. They've had to modify what they do, the things they enjoy. And so now they're able to be empowered to do these things. They're back on the table. So how can folks find out more about Foodini?
Foodini.co is our website. Anyone in the world of restaurants or food service, that's probably the place to go. Get me on LinkedIn, Dylan McDonnell. Foodini also on LinkedIn. My email is dylan@getfoodini.com. .co for website, .com for email address. And then our Instagram, TikTok are @getfoodini as well. A number of different ways, but I love speaking to anyone in the world of restaurants, food service, food tech, partnerships, collaborations, etc. A huge part of what we do. If anyone resonated with what we've talked about here, would love you to reach out.
Great. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed our conversation.
Likewise, appreciate you having me on, and thanks for your time.
Thanks for joining us today on the latest episode of Food Tech Stories. Be sure and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform, and keep an eye out for our bi-weekly episodes. I'm your host, Megan Thomas, founder of Ladder 17. Food Tech Stories is edited by TJG Media.